All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Travis. Travis, man, welcome. So great to have you on the show.
Kevin, it's so good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so, this is interesting. You and I connected because who is the guy that sends out I've been on his email list for a while. And I'm
Oh yeah.
Andrew
Andrew. Yeah.
and 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 like most of the time, I mean, I'm just doing my thing, and I've probably been on his email list for at least a year, and I don't open the emails all that out. Every once in a while I will, and about a month or so I opened it, and then I saw you, and then I'm like thinking, man, the Hydro Flask guy. And I was like, I remember when Hydro Flask was a big fat hairy deal because I've got a teenage daughter. And
Okay.
she is right now, she is 12 years old. And I don't remember how many, it was just a few years ago that this whole Visco thing. And I'm like, I didn't quite get it, but my daughter, she was all about Hydro Flasks. And I'm like, well, the Hydro Flask guy, I'm all right. I'm going to fill out their form on their website and I'll just see if this guy, Travis, gets back to me or not. And danged if you didn't get back to me. And then
here we are
having a conversation on Zoom, and you and I just kind of made a connection, and here we are. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of start by turning it over to you, Travis, and just let you share a little bit about your journey. What's some of your history? What do you do? Who do you serve? What motivates you to do what you do? And we'll just kind of start there and give people some context on who Travis is.
Okay, sure, Kevin. Yeah, my name is Travis Rosbach, and I was born in Salem, Oregon, and grew up between Salem and St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. My dad has scuba diving shops down there in St. Croix, Cane Bay Dive Shop. So I started becoming a dive master, a dive instructor at a very young age. I then went on to get a 50-ton U.S. Merchant Marine boat captain's license and did boat captaining for a lot of years all around the planet. And then one day it hit me that I'm actually a commercial airline pilot. So I became a commercial airline pilot and started flying for Seaborne Airlines, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and Puerto Rico, getting on land in the harbors.
Wow.
And got a little tired of the airlines and the red tape and the bureaucracy and the hours, and became a charter pilot, charter jets out of Florida. Did that for a while, but realistically, I always loved business. I inherited a fairly good sized bookshelf of business legends when I was 12, and it rained a lot. It still rains. It rains a lot in Salem. And so I spent a lot of time in my room, a lot of time grounded, and I just poured through these Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, all these business legends, and just have a real affinity for business. And so after the flying days were over, I moved back home to Oregon and started a fence company with a girlfriend at the time. We did real well on that, right? 06, 07, right? When everything was heading straight uphill for the housing economy here in Bend, and sold that, moved out to Oahu, started Oahu Signs and Screen Printing, sort of an agency for marketing and every, promotional piece of product that anybody could ever need in the Hawaiian Islands. One day I was thirsty and wanted a water bottle and didn't want any more single-use plastic washing up on our beach. So I went in to go buy a reusable water bottle, and they didn't have any. BPA had just come out in Europe, and the whole entire wall was empty. The guy told me nobody was making water bottles, and it just came out of my mouth. I'm going to do that. And he kind of laughed. I saw the future 10 years down the road talking about this highly successful water bottle company. Went back, found out that there's only a couple on the market at that time. One was aluminum, and they had BPA also. And the other one was single wall, and it kind of just dribbled all over my face and shirt. And so I started Hydro Flask, and with my partner at the time, and we grew that very large. She took off a multitude of times back to Hawaii and ended up back in Hawaii, and just grew and grew and grew Hydro Flask, and then finally got to the point where I was ready for my next adventure. Sold Hydro Flask and took off and traveled and did yoga and a lot of paddle boarding and just kind of had fun, enjoyed myself for a minute. And then I really missed business. And so I started the Tumalo group back home here in Bend, Oregon. And we work with entrepreneurs. We do business, we do work, and we work with everybody from startups looking to find engineers and factory sourcing here and domestically, which is awesome. And also internationally, which is still very, very viable and feasible. And we also I do consulting for, pretty much anybody looking to do business. So that's kind of where I am.
Very cool. Very cool. One thing that's just having you share all that, it's like you've just kind of been going and just following where you just like, oh, this looks like this would be cool. I mean, scuba diving to then, I spent 7 years working as a commercial fisherman in Alaska and stuff.
Oh, that is so dangerous and so fun and so cool. I would love to have done that.
and I had friends that were skippers or captains of boats and some very large boats too, and then you got into flying. It's like, what's interesting is it's just kind of cool how you just kind of followed where your heart led. Like, I want to go try this and I want to go try this. And you're just like, I did.
Yeah. I get these real strong callings and they just kind of came in and I would just say it out my mouth. And the next thing I knew, that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to get sort of tunnel vision. So when I'm really passionate and really interested in a project or in something going on, I just put my head down, put the blinders on, and I go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's not a bad trait to have at all.
Yeah. So, sometimes I wonder though, but yeah.
I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person? And Travis, I'm just really excited to hear your story, your experience around this, as well as be able to give you the opportunity to honor somebody who's had such a profound impact on your life and on your business.
Cheers. I listen to your show all the time and I hear these wonderful stories about all these people. And I've been thinking about this since we met. And I had all of these people who, I got to meet in real life, and these celebrities and these heroes of mine and these people who I really admired and I looked up to. And really it comes down to my mom. My mom is my biggest cheerleader, and she helps me more than anybody I've ever met. And I remember being a dive master, and she came down to the Virgin Islands to visit, and I kind of said, I'd like to be that person's a dive instructor. She's like, well, why don't you become a dive instructor? I'm like, I don't know. I don't. And sure enough, a week later when she left, I was already signed up to become a dive instructor. Wow. And she's been there with me since day one. But she really has been my biggest advocate and my biggest cheerleader. And she helps. I've got a child, and she helps even now to this day. She's there for me when I need her. And I don't know a lot of other people who have really been there. Glenn Plake was huge when I was growing up. I always idolized Glenn Plake, the skier with the big colorful mohawk. And he was on my folder, and he always, I kind of admired him and really wanted to be a professional ski bum like Glenn. And I met him, and he's a fantastic person. I'm proud to say he's in my phone right now, but it all comes down to my mom, realistically.
Yeah. So what are some things that some of the, one or two really like substantial things that stand out in your mind that have come from the relationship that you've had with your mom?
I think that the dive instructor was probably the earliest and the biggest. I sort of ran away from home at 18. I left Salem and I went down to the Virgin Islands and never to return ever again. And when she came down and she kind of just gave me that push that I needed to become a dive instructor. I remember the graduation ceremony and holding the certificate thinking, wow, I'm a PADI dive instructor, 158190 is my number. And I remember thinking like, geez, I can do anything. Like if I can do this, like what else could I do? And then it wasn't much longer that the dive or the boat captain, idea started to percolate. And same thing. She was like, yeah, what's going to stop you from doing that? And she was living in Florida at the time. And she let me stay at her house while I went over to Fort Lauderdale to take the courses and the quizzes and the tests and the whole procedure to get the licensing. And yeah, it just felt like those two early ones, the dive instructor and the my very first boat captain's license were huge.
Yeah. And so that just, like you said, that just gave you so much confidence to just be like, wow, you know what? Yeah, you know what? She's right. What is stopping me from doing this? And you go through a couple of experiences like that, and it gives you a whole lot of confidence going forward that like, you know what? Yeah, you know what? We might make some mistakes along the way, but that's okay. That's all part of the process. And it's interesting. I have made so many mistakes along the way in my life, in my business, and I will continue to do that. And it's always interesting how usually the biggest mistakes and the most costly mistakes provide the most valuable lessons if we're willing to learn them,
Right. And
it's
a lot of times I repeat them, but yeah, if after, the second or third time, I tend to start picking up on it, but yeah.
Well, that's kind of how it works, right? We have to keep repeating it until we get the lesson.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. I think about my own mom, who, my gosh, man, time flies. She passed away in 1997, right as I was just starting my very first business. And she was, you know what? I've got company here. My granddaughter just walked in.
That's funny. My daughter just came in also just a second ago.
Hold on just a minute.
Okay, sure.
You know what? This is like such a perfect example, because years ago, when I was running my first businesses and I was doing like consulting kind of work, that experience right there would have totally had, oh my gosh, people are going to think I'm unprofessional or whatever. And now it doesn't even faze me. I'm like, you know what? This is just me. This is my life. This is
right.
How it is. And my granddaughters are over here. I'm like, you know what? It is what it is,
Yeah. 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 Exactly right. Like, and if you don't like me and you don't like my daughter coming in or my granddaughter coming in, then this isn't a good fit. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And, I know my mom was, always my biggest supporter too and stuff, was always there to just, and even dad, dad passed away when I was much younger. He passed away in 81 when I was just finishing my 10th grade year when dad passed away. But when I was young, dad always told me, he's like, Kevin, the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And that was his experience. And of course, after I graduated high school, I spent 4 years in the military, and then the next 7 years working as a commercial fisherman in Alaska. And I'll tell you what, fishing in Alaska, that is the epitome of hard work, right?
Yeah. I think that it's between that and LA SWAT. They go right back and forth between the number one deadliest.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that fishing actually takes the number one slot throughout. I think it is the number one most deadly profession.
Okay.
Like the fact that you made it 7 years is phenomenal. That's
I
incredible.
definitely had friends who did not,
Right.
you know,
Bet.
and yeah, I almost got thrown overboard, which is why I decided that I was, you know what, you've done this long enough, you know, and I
Yeah.
finished out my contract, and that's when I decided, okay, I'm going home and I'm not going to do this again. My whole goal was I wanted to save up money to start my own business. That was the reason I was doing that, you know, and
I
so.
bet you were making bank too.
You know, it's interesting. So the first year I went up there was in 1988. I was 23 years old at that time. That first year, I went up there in January and I stayed all the way through October. I worked in different fisheries. But the first guy who gave me a shot was this guy, John Waddell, and he had never hired a greenhorn like me off the dock before. And he let me know that. He's like, Kevin, he's like, I'm a little bit nervous about this. I've never done it this way. I've always hired on recommendation of guys on the crew already. But he's like, I'm a guy short, and so I'm going to give you a shot, and I'm just praying you don't let me down. And for me, that was like, okay, challenge accepted. I'm not going to
Right.
let this
Oh
guy
yeah.
down.
You step up your A game there.
Yeah, I appreciated him giving me a shot. And so when we finished out that season, everybody was getting ready to go home, and he's like, well, what are you going to do, Kevin? And I was like, you know, if I could, I'd like to keep up here working, you know. And he's like, you know what, let me make some calls. And so he just got right on the radio, and he got me a job on another boat. And I'll tell you what, to hear him talk to the skipper of that other boat saying, hey, I got this guy, man, he is a bust his ass worker, and he will do right by you, and he'd love to stay up here and work longer. If you're needing help, I can send him over. And the guy was like, send him over. And I stayed up there for 10 months straight. I came home with about $120,000 in my pocket.
Yeah.
That's after taxes, that's after everything. And at
Wow.
23 years old,
Oh yeah.
that's, you know, and here's the thing, everybody else on the boat, they were making twice as much money as me because I was the new guy. I was the green,
Oh wow.
you know.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
yeah, I made some pretty good money during those years. I started my first business in 1997, and didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I blew through over 300,000 that first year and didn't know what the heck I was doing, you know.
Sure.
And finally,
Sure.
fortunately, found some help. But yeah, and so this whole idea of people thinking, well, if I just had money, then I could start a business. No, not necessarily.
Right. Nah. Money doesn't solve everything.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, Travis, so I mean, I don't know what you're up to these days. I don't know if you know, I mean, for people, anybody like listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like that Travis guy. I like the way Travis shows up. Is there a way for them to find out more information on you and what you got going or anything?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a
Okay.
little bit. Travis Rosbach, Rosbach on LinkedIn. Or you can shoot me an email, travis@tumalogroup.com.
How do you spell that?
TUMALOGROUP.com. Tumalo,
Perfect.
TUMALO.
All right. Very good. Awesome. Well, any last thing you want to share before we call it a wrap, Travis?
Yeah, I'm just so grateful to be here, Kevin. It's so fun to talk to you. I always get something out of our chats, and I just thank you.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. And it was really appreciate you being on the show and taking the time to have this conversation. Because, you know, the big thing that like I said, what my goal is always twofold. I want to give people like yourself the opportunity to share, you know, your story, your experience around this. And then for the listener, I just want to inspire and motivate them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their life. Because as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset we possess.
Indeed.
So thank you so much, Travis, because you've definitely helped us achieve that today, and really appreciate it.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Kevin. I really thank you. Cheers.
You bet.